Thank you all for coming today. My job was to ask you to turn your cell phones down and to pay attention to a wonderful talk. Many of us got involved in wood firing in this country without any real knowledge of the history of it, and trying to put it in context is something that still has to be done. I've been trying to find out the source of the first wood kiln, who built it and where it is, and I tracked it down to a backyard in Inverness, California. It's just a pile of bricks, but nobody will send me a picture, and so I am planning to make a secretive visit there and photograph it. But in the meantime, we have a real researcher, Ann Beyer, who is willing to share with us her story. And if there's ever going to be a good history of wood firing in this country, it's going to start with people like her who are willing to tell their own stories. We all have our own stories, and so we should be very grateful that somebody is willing to step forward and tell her own story in her own words. At the end, there will be about 5 minutes for questions, and now I'd like to introduce Ann.
All right. Hello. Hi. Thank you all for being here. I am really excited and honored to be speaking today. American wood firing is a vast topic, to say the least, and 30 minutes is not enough time to get as specific as I would like. However, I would like to share with you how I got involved with wood firing, an overview of Western and Eastern high temperature traditions, and how current technology is affecting the evolution of wood firing aesthetics. I was first introduced to wood firing as an undergraduate student at Albion College in Albion, Michigan. My classmates and I floundered alongside each other to figure out how to fire our single chamber catenary to cone 10. Through this process, we learned about clay body composition, flame pattern, temperature, and time. It was a phase of my life full of excitement and frustration, and when I realized that clay was something that I could never live without. While wood firing, I felt closer to the ceramic process and was astonished at what we as undergraduate students could accomplish as a team. Through firing that small catenary, I met Ken Shenstone, another Albion alum and creator of the Albion College wood kiln. We began working together after I graduated at his private studio a few blocks down the road. We fired a larger single chamber every 6 weeks, full of production wear to make ends meet, and the infamous 960 cubic foot industrially inspired Albion Onagama, once a year for the sake of art and passion. I spent this part of my career living and breathing wood fire, trying to absorb all that I could. Sorry, a little nervous. I spent this part of my career living and breathing wood fire, trying to absorb all that I could about the wood firing process taught to me by Ken. Every day blended together, separated by the seasons and chores dictated by weather and possibility. I learned to appreciate the mundane and build stamina through making the tons of work needed to keep to our firing schedules. It is truly incredible what you can learn in your own backyard with space, material, and practice. 10 years later, I'm finishing my second year of graduate school at Indiana University with a background in wood firing. During my first year, I was constantly challenged with difficult questions surrounding my choices to continue with wood. One of the most important recurring questions, of course, being, why am I drawn to this traditional firing practice? I began to question wood firing as an aesthetic choice outside of my personal philosophy and backyard convenience. I have never been to China, Korea, Japan, Libourne, Australia, or even Flagstaff. Having no direct exposure to these hotspots of wood firing, could I still call myself a true wood fire artist? I'm wood firing because I love it. Now, I know what you're thinking. Next, I'm going to say it's because of the community and excitement of not knowing what lies on the other side of the door. All of which is true, but I know I love to wood fire because each step of the process is equally important to me. Wood preparation is not just a chore, it's an opportunity to learn about local tree species and create sculptural wood stacks. The type of wood being used and the shape of kiln have a direct effect on the pieces I make in my studio. When I clean up my work and examine the results of my clay body, glaze, loading decisions, I find that I'm planning the next firing again. Being from southern Michigan, the wood firing process fits so neatly into the industrial and agricultural landscape, it never seemed out of place to me. Is this because wood firing has become Americanized, or is it because it is an American tradition? The ever-present and incidental tradition of wood firing written across my work led me to reconsider how wood-fired work currently fits in the contemporary American context. We are living in an age of technological advancement. The cross-pollination of ideas and techniques across mediums has never been easier. The lines drawn between the factions of pottery and sculpture are becoming less and less rigid. The wood firing community is growing rapidly and easily with help from information through social media, online databases, and easier access to kilns and firing classes across America. Kiln building information has become widespread, and a variety of wood kilns are available for students to use in schools, community centers, and private studios. Wood firing is now an expected part of many academic curriculums, and this has given wood firing stronger support within the contemporary conversation. Although wood firing fits comfortably within the academic setting, critics will point to wood firing process as being a limiting surface that overshadows personal narrative. My quest to continue wood firing and find individuality within this institution motivated me to reflect on the advancements in American wood firing aesthetic and examine the American traditions of high temperature wood firing. Numerous artists and historians have written about high-temperature wood firing and traveled the world, bringing back knowledge of kiln design and firing techniques. The challenge today lies in sifting through the more than plentiful amount of information regarding wood firing, not just in America, but across the globe. There are too many books to mention, but Jack Troy's Wood-Fired Stoneware and Porcelain and Wood-Fired Ceramics, Contemporary Practices by Cole Minogue and Robert Sanderson were two influential books and a starting point for me. The logbook dedicated solely to the practice of wood firing, also edited by Cole Minogue and Robert Sanderson, provides a platform for wood fire discussion and communication. If you're interested in staying involved with the current woodfire conversation, subscribing to the logbook is a great place to start and a wonderful resource. Wood firing is a long process, which makes international and national woodfire conferences extremely important to the evolution of wood firing aesthetics. Australian international woodfire conferences were influential in the development of American woodfire knowledge and the aesthetic of many hosted by Australian woodfire artist Janet Mansfield in the 80s and 90s. Mansfield, editor of Ceramics Art and Perception and Ceramics Technical, published significant articles with a focus on wood firing, helping to facilitate the conversation of wood firing to a growing audience. In order to explore contemporary American woodfire aesthetics, it's important to step back and examine the evolution of traditions as they made their way to this country. High-temperature woodfire is young in the history of ceramics in the Americas. There is an older, rich history of American Indian pottery in many parts of North America, which are still active today. For example, the Eastern Cherokee have been practicing their ceramic tradition on their own lands in the United States, dating back 3,000 years. Despite our close proximity to these indigenous cultures and traditional techniques, this is not the aesthetic that ceramic community typically associates with being traditional wood-fired work. The surfaces that have become synonymous with wood-fired tradition hinge on the presence of wood-fire ash in the form of flashing surfaces and ash accumulation at high temperatures around 2,400 degrees Fahrenheit. This presence of ash and has history in Western and Eastern techniques, both playing a large role in sculpting the American wood-fire aesthetic we know today. Seagrove, North Carolina, is famously known for its folk pottery tradition and is home to a concentration of today's contemporary woodfire artists. The Western folk pottery tradition began with country potters firing wares with wood out of necessity. Post-colonial American high-fire wood-firing traditions manifested most notably in country potters making utilitarian wares in the 19th century. In regions like Seagrove, with an abundance of clay and timber cultivated the perfect conditions for a wood-fire pottery community, some of the oldest generations of potters still live and work in Seagrove today, making wood and salt-fired wares in a tradition and style of the region. The jug form has become an iconic representation of wood-fired craft. These jugs show evidence of their firings across the surface, and brushwork can be seen crisp and clear on some and melted and obscured on others. An after effect of the wood-firing process. Jugs with no brushwork highlight the natural flashing and ash accumulation of wood firing. Contemporary woodfire artists still reference these techniques today across the country through form and surface work. It is no surprise that Starworks hosted a 2017 Woodfire Conference showcasing their commercial sales of local clays with research thanks to Takuro Shibata and Josh Kopis. The application of using local clays in tandem with burning wood, a renewable energy source, is creating a new discussion about how local regions can adapt sustainable practices with quality results. Excuse me one second. The wood-firing aesthetic of natural ash melt through time and temperature derives from the East. In this style, wood ash is an intricate part of the aesthetic, and firings can last for days in order to accumulate more wood ash onto pieces. This type of firing has direct origins to kiln designs such as anagamas and noborigamas found in China, Korea, and Japan. American ceramic artists were notably introduced to these Japanese aesthetics and philosophy through books such as Louise Cort's Shigaraki, Potter's Valley, and Daniel Rhodes' Tamba, The Timeless Art of Japanese Village. Wood firing in Japan is a direct reflection of culture. This is evident in many spiritual and aesthetic ways, but perhaps the most iconic is the wood-fired tea bowl. The tea ceremony reflects the spiritual practice of Zen Buddhists and their philosophy of aesthetics, which is echoed in design and surface qualities of Japanese tea bowls. The impact of Japanese wood-firing aesthetic is evident in the American practice of making tea bowls. These American tea bowls, ranging from oxidation-fired to wood-fired, are usually shown outside the context of the Japanese tea ceremony. The American tea bowl has become a symbol of spiritual practice, working with clay and the connection to a larger clay community, one that encompasses more than just the woodfire community. And I'm really looking forward to reading The Tea Bowl East and West by Bonnie Kemsky, who gave a talk about that this morning. Wood firing traditions from Western and Eastern hemispheres are two of the main veins of high-temperature ceramic tradition in America. However, many wood fire artists today do not fit so neatly in either category. Fred Olson published the Kiln Book in 1973, popularizing the Olson fast fire wood kiln and inspiring other fast fire kiln designs. Hybrid kilns like Kevin Crow's Onigama-Noborigama combination kiln create a multitude of different surfaces. These kinds of kilns are becoming more frequent as the desire for kilns to encompass multiple wood fire surfaces grows. The train kiln, designed by John Neely, allows artists to achieve Onigama-like effects with less wood and time and is a great fit for academic settings where multiple day firings are more difficult to organize and accomplish, which is the reason why I'm currently firing a train wood kiln at Indiana University. The catalyst to the adoption of high-temperature, flashy, drippy wood-fire ceramics into the American definition of traditional ceramics is American industry. It is no surprise that many artists develop around industrial areas because of access to waste material, as well as an opportunity to learn from companies and employees knowledgeable in industrial application of refractory material. Many of the most revered ceramic hubs in America exist because of industry, such as the Archie Bray Foundation for Ceramic Arts and Alfred University. Brick and refractory waste provide affordable material for the ceramic artist. Traditional kiln design and aesthetics continues to be an inspiration for woodfire artists, but American industry has created an avenue for kiln innovation. The term Onigama, for example, in America can encompass many different unique designs. Kiln building is labor-intensive, but anyone with a dream to pursue ceramics and access to materials can build their own wood kiln. Kiln schematics are easily shared and distributed, resulting in wood kilns of all different shapes and sizes in every corner of the world. This close-up of Simon Levin's wood kiln map shows different colors of the different types of wood kilns that are located across the United States, those of which that have been registered. There's still many kilns that people have built in their studios and schools that are not located on this map. So this just kind of gives you an idea of how many wood kilns are present in America today. It was not only beauty and uniqueness of woodfire surface that attracted Americans to the aesthetic, it was also the cultivation of community. Woodfire artists, unlike other clay artists, typically do not load and fire kilns alone. This has developed outreach within the larger clay community, internet, and social media platforms, have given woodfire artists the capability to easily connect all over the world and share designs and firing techniques. This globalist view of implementing different art-making styles is not new by any means, but the rate of information sharing is challenging the traditional woodfire aesthetics. For Americans, to use wood is not a practicality, it's an aesthetic choice. For some artists, wood firing is the most sustainable energy source. The contemporary conversation revolves around personal narrative to first choose to fire with wood, and second in kiln design and application. To master the art of wood firing requires more than a lifetime of work, but is becoming easier to learn with the large number of woodfire artists in America today, as well as easier access to kilns. Woodfire artists consciously design their kilns to fit their firing needs and create work to fit their kilns and surface aesthetic, varying greatly from artist to artist. Contemporary wood firing includes fast firing, low firing, using a variety of glazes and slips, reduction cooling, adding salt and soda, and even decals on pottery and sculpture. The oral traditions and teaching of apprentices has grown to include the academic institution and therefore innovation. The involvement of the academic institution solidifies wood firing's validity within contemporary ceramics. Wood firing will ebb and flow in its popularity with trends, but it will continue to grow and have a dedicated following. When I began this research, I thought I would find a clear indicator of what makes wood firing in America significantly unique. Perhaps the closest to the American style can be identified lies in kiln innovation. Wood firing is culturally diverse, a global conversation, and so much of contemporary wood firing falls outside of easily identifiable tradition. Technological advancement in social media are greatly affecting the way wood firing is applied in contemporary ceramics, in the contemporary ceramics conversation. Art has the ability to communicate parallel human experiences, and the journey of high-temperature wood firing is a perfect example of this aesthetic movement and evolution. There is diversity in contemporary ceramics fired with wood, but the shared process unites the conversation. I want to thank my professors at Indiana University, Chris Boger, Tim Mather, Malcolm Smith, and Chase Gamblin, for accepting me into their program and giving me a platform to research and practice my art. I also want to thank all the artists that responded to my inquiries about woodfire practice: Peter Callis, Linda Christensen, Jason Hess, Jack Troy, Tom Unzinger. Wood firing is a vast practice, and hearing the reasons why each of you choose to fire was fascinating and enlightening, and I thank you for sharing. I also want to thank Bloomington woodfire potter Ruth Conway for lending me her notes and handouts from the 1999 Iowa City Woodfire Conference and the countless stories around her single catenary. Lastly, I want to thank Ken Shenstone for sharing his studio with me for many years and allowing me a place to grow in this field. I am continually amazed with the support that exists within the larger woodfire community and the larger clay community. And that concludes my talk, and I just want to thank you all again for being here, and I wanted to open it up for some questions that you may have. Hi there. There's a microphone in the center of the room, so if you want to make your way there, then the rest of us can hear the question. Yeah, that one there.
When you started your ceramic career and you started getting into everything before you went to grad school, did you know that this was the type of firing that you wanted to do, or is this something that you fell into and couldn't get out of? Or, I mean, I've done a few wood firings so far, and if it was up to me, if I wasn't a business student, this is where I would be going. So I'm just curious as to where your point was that you knew that this was like exactly where you wanted to go.
Well, that's a really great question. Wood firing is really labor intensive, and I've had a lot of ups and downs with wood firing over the years, just kind of wondering if it's something that I can continue practicing financially, emotionally, needing a crew, needing a studio. I don't personally have my own kiln, so I've moved from studio to be able to continue wood firing, and it takes a lot of commitment. And when I transitioned from working at Ken's studio in Albion to Indiana University, I really realized that it was just a process that I can't let go of, and that I really need to have a part of my clay practice for the long haul. So I guess following your intuition and really just listening to what your aesthetic practice is telling you. Okay.
You talked about kiln design being the one thing that defines an American style in wood firing. Do you have any thoughts about us sort of borrowing the T-bowl form, or other ways that we as American wood firers can sort of develop our own style and forms and clay bodies to allow us to make it, to define ourselves as American wood-fired artists? Maybe that's referencing the Native American history or potters that came before here in this country.
Yeah, that's something that I personally struggle with a lot too. But I think that art and clay, there's just so much borrowing that goes on. I think it's really important to cite those other cultures, and it's totally acceptable to be drawn to those aesthetics and to be to maybe begin with copying and then really diving into why those forms are important to you, why they keep popping up in your practice, and just traveling, talking to other artists, not just in the woodfire community, but in the clay community, talking to artists from different mediums and bringing that back into your studio practice. And I think the work will evolve from there and start to reflect a little bit more of maybe personal shape, personal narrative in that way. And just being patient. Wood firing takes so long. Sometimes, that anagama that I showed in the beginning, we could only fire that once a year. So the turnover of that development is a little bit slower with wood fire. So it's not that you should not recognize that cultural borrowing, cultural appropriation, but also not being afraid to kind of explore shapes and copy a few things and then cite and then find your own style within that. Okay, yeah.
Woodfire typically brings functional work to mind. How do you feel sculptural work falls in line with wood firing? How can it benefit from this process? What room does it have in it? Normally people just think of the functional work, but there are a lot of contemporary artists working sculpturally, and I feel that wood firing definitely has a place there, but I'd be interested in your thoughts.
Sure. Two woodfire artists that I really appreciate sculpture from would be Peter Callis and Jeff Shapiro, both two artists making really incredible sculpture with wood-fired surfaces on them. And I think depending on the surface that you want across your work, maybe it's flashy, maybe it's deep in the firebox, but making sculpture with an understanding that wood firing is a part of that cycle. So allowing there to be a conversation with that across the work. I think that figurative sculpture has a place in wood firing, abstract sculpture, functional wear, and that can lead to really interesting stacking and communication between the different factions in that way. So I think that's all the time that we have. You guys are welcome to approach me after in the hallway if you have further questions, and I just want to thank you all again for coming out.